The ground shook beneath the feet of every soldier standing on the ancient stone walls. Commander Sarah Chun gripped her plasma rifle tighter as she watched the horizon turn dark. The Draconari had finally arrived. For 300 years, humanity had heard stories about them. They were conquerors of galaxies. They were destroyers of worlds. They called themselves the Children of Fire, and their leader was known across 1,000 star systems as the Dragon Lord. The fortress of New Damascus was the last human stronghold on the planet Kepler-7. Behind these walls lived 2 million civilians. They were farmers, teachers, doctors, and children who had never known war until now. Sarah had promised them safety. She had promised them hope. Now, watching the sky fill with enemy ships, she wondered if she could keep that promise. The Dragon Lord's flagship descended through the clouds like a nightmare made real. It was massive beyond imagination. The ship stretched across the sky for nearly 3 kilometers. Its hull was covered in scales of black metal that reflected no light. At the front of the ship, 2 enormous engines glowed red like the eyes of a demon. When the ship finally stopped above the fortress, its shadow covered everything. Day became night in an instant. Sarah heard her soldiers whispering prayers. Some of them were crying. She could not blame them. The Draconari had conquered over 400 species across the galaxy. Not one had survived with their freedom intact. The aliens believed they were superior to all other life forms. They saw other species as nothing more than slaves or food. A massive hologram appeared in the sky above the fortress. The Dragon Lord himself looked down upon the humans. He was terrifying to behold. Standing over 3 meters tall, his body was covered in natural armor that looked like dragon scales. His eyes burned with an inner fire. 2 enormous wings stretched from his back, each one capable of lifting his massive body through the air. When he spoke, his voice echoed across the entire valley. "Humans of Earth," the Dragon Lord said, "I am Varkath the Eternal. I have conquered empires that existed before your son was born. I have burned worlds that thought themselves invincible. Your species is young. Your technology is primitive. Your resistance is meaningless." Sarah watched as her soldiers lowered their weapons in fear. The Dragon Lord continued speaking, his voice filled with ancient pride. "Surrender now, and I will show mercy. Your strongest will serve in my armies. Your scientists will work in my laboratories. Your children will learn to worship the Draconari as gods. Refuse, and I will reduce this fortress to ash. I will hunt down every human in this galaxy. I will erase your species from the memory of the universe." The hologram faded, but its message remained heavy in the air. Sarah's second-in-command, Lieutenant Marcus Webb, approached her with terror in his eyes. He was a good soldier, but he had never faced anything like this before. None of them had. "Commander," Marcus said quietly, "what do we do? We cannot fight them. Our weapons are toys compared to theirs. Our walls are paper against their firepower. Maybe we should accept their terms. At least some of us would survive." Sarah looked at her young lieutenant. She understood his fear. It was the same fear that had paralyzed countless species before them. The Draconari counted on that fear. They used it as a weapon more powerful than any bomb or laser. But Sarah had studied history. She knew something about humanity that the Dragon Lord did not understand. "Marcus," she said firmly, "do you know why the Draconari have never invaded Earth directly? Do you know why they attacked our colonies first instead of striking at our home world?" Marcus shook his head, confusion mixing with his fear. "Because they are afraid of us," Sarah continued. "They have watched us for centuries. They saw us survive ice ages and plagues. They saw us split the atom and rebuild after nuclear war. They saw us fight each other with terrible weapons and then find peace. They know something about humans that we sometimes forget ourselves." Sarah turned to face her soldiers. Thousands of men and women stood on those walls, waiting for orders. They were scared and uncertain. They needed to remember who they were. "Humans do not surrender," Sarah shouted so everyone could hear. We never have. We never will. When the universe throws death at us, we throw it right back. When gods demand our worship, we build towers to challenge heaven. The Dragon Lord thinks his wings make him powerful, but power is not about size or strength. Power is about will. And no species in this galaxy has more will than humanity. Something changed in the eyes of her soldiers. Fear did not disappear completely, but it was joined by something else. Pride. Defiance. The same fire that had driven humans to cross oceans and reach for stars began to burn again in their hearts. Deep beneath the fortress, in laboratories hidden from enemy scanners, Dr. James Okonkwo worked frantically on humanity's secret weapon. For decades, Earth's greatest scientists had prepared for this moment. They knew the Draconari would come eventually. They knew traditional weapons would not be enough. So they had created something new. The device was small enough to fit in a soldier's backpack, but its power came from principles of physics that the Draconari had never discovered. Humans called it the Prometheus engine. It could generate an electromagnetic pulse so precise and so powerful that it would disable any technology within its range without harming organic life. James finished the final calibration and contacted Sarah through a secure channel. Commander, the engine is ready, but you need to understand the risks. We have never tested it on such a large scale. If something goes wrong, it could affect our own systems too. Sarah smiled grimly. Doctor, if we do nothing, we die. If we try and fail, we die. But if we try and succeed, we live free. Humanity has always chosen to try. The Dragon Lord grew impatient. His hologram appeared again, larger and more terrifying than before. His wings spread wide, casting shadows that seemed to swallow the light itself. Your silence insults me, Varkath roared. I offered you mercy, and you respond with contempt. Very well. I will show you the fate of those who defy the Draconari. I will crack your walls like eggshells. I will feast on your flesh while your children watch. Then I will teach the survivors what true fear means. The Draconari flagship began to charge its main weapon. Energy gathered at the front of the ship, glowing brighter and brighter until it hurt to look at directly. The weapon could level mountains. It could turn oceans to steam. Against the walls of New Damascus, it would leave nothing but memories. Sarah gave the order. 100 soldiers carrying Prometheus engines activated their devices simultaneously. The pulse was invisible to the naked eye, but its effects were immediate and devastating. Every piece of Draconari technology within 50 kilometers simply stopped working. Their weapons fell silent. Their shields collapsed. Their engines died. The massive flagship, once a symbol of invincible power, began to fall from the sky. Varkath screamed in rage as his hologram flickered and disappeared. For the first time in his 1,000-year life, the Dragon Lord knew fear. His wings were useless without the technological enhancements that allowed them to carry his heavy body. His armor, once impenetrable, was now just heavy metal weighing him down. He was falling, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. The flagship crashed into the mountains beyond the fortress. The impact shook the entire region. Smaller Draconari ships fell from the sky like burning stars. The army that was supposed to conquer humanity lay broken and helpless on the ground. Sarah did not hesitate. She ordered her soldiers to advance. Thousands of humans poured out of the fortress gates, their weapons ready. The Draconari warriors were still dangerous in hand-to-hand combat, but they were confused and demoralized. They had never faced an enemy who could strip away their technological advantages so completely. The battle lasted for 3 days. It was brutal and bloody. Many humans died fighting creatures stronger and faster than themselves, but they did not stop. They did not retreat. They pressed forward with a determination that shocked the Draconari. These small, fragile creatures fought like demons. They sacrificed themselves for each other. They refused to accept defeat even when victory seemed impossible. On the fourth day, Sarah stood before the captured dragon lord. Varkath was bound in chains forged from the wreckage of his own ship. His wings were broken. His fire was extinguished. He looked at the human commander with a mixture of hatred and disbelief. "How?" he demanded. "How did you defeat us? We have conquered species far more advanced than yours. We have destroyed civilizations that lasted for millions of years. You are nothing. You are insects. How did insects defeat dragons?" Sarah knelt down to meet his eyes. She wanted him to understand. She wanted him to take this message back to whatever remained of his empire. "You made the same mistake every tyrant makes," she said calmly. "You measured strength by size and technology. You counted ships and weapons and soldiers. But you never understood what makes a species truly powerful. It is not about what we have. It is about what we are willing to do with what we have." She stood up and looked at the rising sun. The light was returning to Kepler 7. Behind her, survivors emerged from the fortress to see the impossible victory their soldiers had won. "Humans have always been small," Sarah continued. "We have always been weak compared to the universe around us. But we learned something that your kind never did. We learned that weakness can become strength when you refuse to accept it. We learned that fear can become courage when you face it. We learned that death can become life when you fight for something greater than yourself." The Dragon Lord said nothing. For the first time in his existence, he had no words. He had believed himself a god among mortals. Now he was a prisoner of the very insects he had planned to enslave. News of the victory spread across the galaxy. Species that had lived under Draconari oppression for centuries began to rise up. They had seen what humans had done. They had seen that the dragons were not invincible. Hope spread like wildfire from star system to star system. Humanity had changed everything, not through superior technology or greater numbers. They had won through pure stubborn refusal to accept defeat. They had proven that the smallest species could bring down the mightiest empire if they had the courage to try. The castle walls of New Damascus still stood, cracked but unbroken. They became a symbol for the entire galaxy, a reminder that true strength comes not from power, but from the willingness to use whatever power you have in defense of what you love. And somewhere in the stars, other species began to whisper a new name with hope and admiration. They spoke of humans. They spoke of the small creatures from a small planet who had taught the universe that even dragons can fall.